I'm undead, I'm not unreasonable.
Hello and back to YCFT. This week, well, we were annoyed.
Yes.
We were really looking forward to
Yes.
the last voyage of the Demeter.
Yes.
It gets to its worldwide release date, and it is nowhere to be seen at any of the major UK cinemas. I even went to some independents as well. Nowhere.
No.
Turns out the company that distributed it in the UK for Universal got bought out by Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
We found this out through someone tweeted at Cineworld, and Cineworld responded. That's how we found out before eventually an article came out.
Yeah. There was no big announcement or anything.
Yeah. So we were feeling like we wanted to watch something Dracula
We were so
related.
annoyed. Yeah,
we were annoyed.
Really looking forward to this movie.
Yeah. So we decided to watch the only other thing that really gives the Demeter enough, like a relatively decent amount of time, because in the Dracula novel, it's one chapter.
Yes.
The small segment, obviously spread over a long period of time. It's all told through journal entries. So we looked at the BBC's, or Netflix. It was a joint venture by BBC and Netflix. Dracula. It was a 3-part series.
Yeah.
And that covers the Demeter in its second episode. So we watched this entire series again.
Yeah.
In response to us not being able to watch Last Voyage of the Demeter.
In protest, essentially.
Basically,
we watched it out of anger.
We wanted something Dracula.
We needed something to, fulfill that Demeter fix. And this is like the next best thing that we have.
So we thought we'd do a video on it.
Yeah, we love this series.
We do. As this was released back in 2020. I said it's a 3-part series, like basically an hour long each episode.
Yeah.
It was created by Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat. Mm-hmm. The two of them are probably internationally most famous for creating Sherlock. Mm. But they're also really big in the Doctor Who space, because Stephen Moffat was a showrunner for a very long time. And before he was a showrunner, he was a writer under Russell T Davies. So his tenure as showrunner is mixed, some really good, some quite bad. But Mark Gatiss has acted and written on Doctor Who multiple times as well. So they are big in British television. Mark Gatiss is a massive gothic horror nerd as well.
Is.
What's the name of the documentary that you always watch?
A History of Horror, and he made it in that was a BBC thing. It was 3 parts back in 2010, I think, and I remember watching it at the time, and like if I couldn't fall more in love with Mark Gatiss, honestly, that man has my heart. And he's just a total nerd, and it was a really great documentary. It's like the 3 episodes are devoted to different horror eras. So like the first episode was about Universal horror, the second one was all about Hammer, and then the third one was like, the emergence of the Hollywood horror and, traversing into modern horror that we have today. But yeah, I mean, basically I think Dracula was a long time coming for Gatiss. I think it was literally just a matter of time before he, started writing something gothic in nature himself. And yeah, the guy's just a big nerd. Yeah.
The series kind of follows that same thing. There's a little bit of the Universal Dracula in there. There's a lot of the Hammer in there, but then there also is the modern Dracula as well. So it follows a similar
pattern, yeah.
So yeah, we have 3 episodes here, and the first one's called what's the episode list?
The first episode is called Rules of the Beast. The second episode is called Blood Vessel. And then the third episode is called The Dark Compass.
Before we jump into each episode, obviously we have to talk about the big man himself. Who plays Dracula?
He is called Claes Bang. He's a Danish actor. I've not seen him in anything before or since Dracula, but he is...
Yes, you have.
Have I?
I have. He was in The Northman.
I just totally lied to you. He is in The Northman. I forget about that.
He's naked in The Northman.
How did I forget this? I went to see this in the cinema as well.
Yeah,
How did I forget about
fantastic,
naked Claes Bang?
I adored him as Dracula.
He was a great casting choice.
He's sexy. Let's be real. He's very sexy.
So this adaptation does okay. So I mean, we'll talk a lot about this, but yeah, this one, I guess if you wanted to compare it to one of like the previous Draculas, this sort of goes down the more sort of like Hammer-esque portrayals, because obviously Christopher Lee, he was a very charismatic, very sexy, demure figure. Claes Bang is a lot more playful as Dracula, but in terms of looks, I think they were going for a more Hammer horror-esque aesthetic with the character. Maybe a little bit of Lugosi in there as well.
I think that there's definitely references to both, and even like a few other interpretations.
Yeah.
As well, like I even think there's a few throwbacks to the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula
in bits.
as well.
Yeah, in
it's
bits.
it's like a celebration along with a deconstruction of Dracula and what is Dracula, because the Dracula's in the behind the scenes they talk about this story's been told so many times. Everyone knows the rules of a vampire. So what else can you do other than deconstruct it and try and be a little bit playful with it?
Yeah.
And so Claes Bang he was a very interesting choice, and I think he plays a fantastic role. And his opponent, we'll say, his nemesis has to be a Van Helsing.
Yes.
They gender swap her. And what's the name? I always forget the name of the actress.
Dolly Wells.
Dolly Wells plays in a dual role of two different Van Helsings, which we'll get into later on. We start off as Agatha Van Helsing, who was like a disgruntled nun who was more into like the sciences than gods. Like, gender swapping a character is usually quite controversial. But Van Helsings have been like interpreted in so many different ways over the years. This gender swap works. Having her be Dracula fears the cross, so having Van Helsing be part of the church makes sense, but to have her be disgruntled and have this fascination of wanting to know why he does the way he does, why is he scared of certain things, it just kind of works. And the way they play off each other,
Yeah.
their dynamic alone makes it work.
Yeah.
He can't enter a home without being invited. Why not? The light of the day would burn him to death. Why? He's terrified of the cross, and yet he's no believer.
Immediately by gender swapping her, you shift the dynamics between Dracula and Van Helsing, but at the same time, by making her a nun, and just by how she's written and also how she's portrayed, this is a nun that has no time for God, and she admits herself when people question how kind of like cynical she is as a nun. She says she's fallen into the trap that a lot of women did in that time, where she's in a loveless marriage and she's just trying to save face, so she's put herself into a nunnery to just kind of make existence easy for herself. So that's kind of where her situation is. And immediately it sets for this very kind of playful relationship between them that I don't think you get with a male Van Helsing, because it's like it's testosterone versus testosterone, it's masculinity versus masculinity. And this is immediately, it's a very different dynamic, but doing away with, like the typical kind of like sexual tension that you might imagine from a female nemesis, which I really appreciate.
I feel like sexuality is a big part of this series as well. And I think we've discussed it we always do whenever we watch a Dracula. Is Dracula sexually driven in any way? And I generally don't think he is. I think he sees each and every person as a meal, whether it's male or female. He doesn't care, and I think he will make himself attractive to anything to get what he wants. And I think this definitely plays into like the first episode. Was it Rules of the Beast, did you say?
Rules of the Beast.
The Jonathan Harker story. I think this makes Jonathan Harker a much more interesting character than he's been in the past. He's often, in a lot of adaptations, he is the character kind of just gets forgotten about. At his core, he's not an interesting character.
Yeah, I always find him a bit of a wet lettuce.
And his relationship with Dracula, because when we meet him, he's basically dying. He's at this nunnery. And I says to him, did you have sex with Count Dracula? Like, you try and narrow things down. It's like, is this a sexually transmitted disease? And why does he look this way?
Because he looks sort of, he doesn't look well.
He does
not look well. Like his fingernails are falling off. He's lost all his hair. The man looks dead.
Yeah. But it's not the question you'd expect to get from a nun in a place of God. It's like,
yes, did you have sex
especially in
with
the
Count
time period
Dracula?
that this is set.
Yeah.
I love for me, the castle, it is very good. The exterior shots that they use is the same castle from Nosferatu, isn't it?
It is in Slovakia.
Yeah. I think the castle, it's a mix. There are certain rooms that are definitely very Hammer-esque, but I think overall, the interior of the castle is very universal, Bela Lugosi.
Interesting.
Just the way, like, the certain types of staircases that it has and stuff like that, the turrets, that's very
labyrinthine. And there's a whole sequence in the first episode where Harker, he gets lost in the castle. He's constantly trying to find this other... He knows that there's a woman in the castle, even though Dracula repeatedly tells him, no, we're alone. There's no one living in the castle. But Harker is convinced that there might be a woman that's, needs his help. And whenever he tries to get deeper and deeper into the castle, he gets lost and, he's got to try and find his way back. And I do really like that. We should also say that the first episode, it's kind of split into two different narrative structures. So we've got the present, where Harker is in the nunnery and is telling Agatha and another nun his story. He's recounting his tale of Dracula because he's been rescued. And she's asking him all these questions. And then we flash back to his time at the castle and his time with Dracula. So we've got... We see his time with Dracula in Transylvania, and then we also are seeing Harker in the present day in Budapest. Well, like present day, you know, like rescued from the castle.
Obviously, as he's in the castle longer, he's getting weaker and weaker.
Yes.
Dracula's getting stronger and stronger. And I love how they portray it. It's basically how Dracula talks about blood. Anyway, it's like a vintage. It's like a wine. He refers to people as
Flavour.
vintages.
Yeah.
And there's this line he keeps using, says, blood is lives. And he often talks about, he says that you are what you eat.
Yes.
And when we meet him, he's very
old, decrepit, as he's in the book.
Thick Romanian accent.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Harker.
And he wants him there to basically help with his move in, purchasing property and his move across to England. And basically, Barry's arranged it with Harker's company. He's going to stay and help him with his English. And he very quickly, next time we see him, he instantly looks better.
Yes.
And his English, he's like, oh, your English is perfect. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's all down to you. It's because he's drank from him.
Yes.
So it's very much this, he won't eat just anybody because he clearly takes a little bit of them.
It's an important thing in this particular adaptation where
You are what you eat.
you are literally what you eat. Dracula inherits the traits and the mannerisms of his victims. And Harker, obviously being, this very well-educated, young man who, is a solicitor, Dracula is able to, his English, obviously, he doesn't sound Transylvanian Romanian. He starts speaking with a British accent. And yeah, this is something that's a really big part of the series. And it's a big motivation for, why Dracula, why he kills who he kills. And a motive for doing what, a lot of what he does.
But it's also why he wants to feed off him slowly.
Wants to make him last.
So he can learn as much from him. But we see him get younger and younger.
Yeah.
And it's fantastically done. And I really like how we're not going to spoil every part of this series because it is relatively new still. But there is a big... So I'm thinking we leave his wives out of it. Because I think that's a very interesting, shocking scene. But we can say what happens to people usually after they're bitten.
Okay.
Dracula he actually says most people he feeds from dies. But some of them actually do they come back. But they're not like him. Weirdly, it's kind of related to what I was saying in our Blackula video. When a lot of his people that he's fed on come back sort of feral. It's the same in this. And Harker retains a lot of his personality, which he said was quite rare. And he actually does refer to him, which goes back to the sexuality thing, as his, his best bride.
Yes.
Because he's retaining, as he's dying, as he's being fed on, he's retaining a lot of who he was.
Yeah.
Which seemed to me must be quite a rare thing. Well, we see a lot of the people who've come before, and he kind of keeps them in boxes.
It's one of the more horrific things of this first episode where Harker stumbles on the forgotten corpses of Dracula's victims that have just been left to rot in boxes, but they are still conscious, and they come after Harker. And when he's with Agatha, he tells her, what they were saying to him, and she translates it as, kill me. Kill me, I think.
Yeah.
They're dead, and they've been locked away in these, in these boxes, just left to rot, but still very much retaining who they were.
Dracula, he says, is that box for me? And he's like, yes.
Yes, it is.
That actually leads to one of my favourite moments in the first one, when he's being chased by all the former meals. It's
oh yeah.
When he stumbles on Dracula's coffin, and it's big, it's stone, it's cracked down the middle. But you can see it's heavy. I think they use it as a way to represent how strong he is, how supernatural he is, and he just opens it himself. He's massive stone lid. But then he comes up, bangs out, blood red eyes, just all dark around him. It's the Christopher Lee look of the very, very famous Christopher Lee shot.
Yeah, very Hammer-esque,
and it's
for sure.
It's
glorious,
marvelous, but you kind of know he's done for at this point.
Harker is a goner.
The facade. Dracula doesn't need to keep up the facade anymore.
No, but it's strange as well because said Harker is not that he's a problematic character. I just think he's hard to make interesting in adaptations. And
no offense to Keanu Reeves, but Harker is the weakest part of the
Keanu
Francis
Reeves
Ford Coppola one.
he can't do a British accent for shit. Like, let's be honest.
That's Keanu Reeves before he was Keanu Reeves today.
I have problems with the Gary Oldman Dracula. We'll probably do a video on it one day. In some ways it's great. I do find that there are a few issues with it. But yeah, like Harker is just a tricky character, and I think it's because he's in adaptations, all of his scenes are with a much more interesting male character.
Yeah.
And it's like Harker's whole purpose is to kind of get emasculated away. You know, like as Dracula gets stronger and stronger, Harker gets weaker and weaker. And even in this adaptation, you know, like one of his last big scenes is when he's like curdled into a little fetal position and like he can't even, just basically almost skeletal at this point because he's so drained.
Is that when they're up on the turrets?
That's when they're up on the
when
turrets,
Dracula asks him to look up on the sun, he's like, tell me what she looks like.
Yeah, and he refuses to...
He refuses to do it.
Yeah.
So the second part of this episode, I think this is what helps make Harker more interesting. There's a lot of time is dedicated to him, which usually in a film it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. We've got to get that bit out of the way and then move into the more juicy bits. But
so then we get like, basically it's like the showdown at the nunnery or the convent. Dracula's coming back for his bride.
He wants it. He's got a weird respect for Harker.
I think because he's retained his personality.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like he's not just a mindless beast. And Harker escapes basically by just jumping off the castle.
Yeah, basically.
Ends up in the convent with Agatha and this other nun, and in possibly one of the best moments, he says that you've read my report, you know my story. He's like, yes, well, I want to hear it from you.
Yes.
And we see she hands him a story. He's just been writing Dracula over and over and over again.
Dracula must be served.
Like he doesn't
that,
remember writing. He's like, no, I didn't write this. We didn't know your story. We had to act like we knew your story, but you just scribbled this over and over and over again. Very
much, like The Shining, all work and no play. It's very much like in that sense.
He's like, he's lost his fingernails at this point and everything.
Oh yeah, the fingernails are peeling off.
Should we reveal who the other nun is?
Yeah, nun number 2 is Mina. And it's a bit of it's a shock because she's kind of been hidden from us even as the audience, like the camera doesn't dwell on her face that much. But what's more shocking is Harker does not even recognise her. And in this version, Harker and Mina are already married. And he does not even recognise her. And it's only when it's revealed to be Mina that he's like, oh my god, how did I not and it's really
This is such a big part of his. There's one thing that Dracula makes him do before when Harker knows it's going to be his final night. Yeah. He tells him to write 3 letters to Mina and date them on different days that he's setting off, basically to
as an
not
alibi.
Arouse suspicion that he died in the castle.
Yeah,
and it's like that's evil.
It really is. But he's had centuries of doing this. I mean, if we're going to talk about evil, one of the more disturbing moments of the whole show, not just this episode, is when Harker, who Dracula calls him Johnny, when he's in the castle, he can hear a baby crying. And Dracula's adamant that, Johnny, there is no baby. There is a baby in the castle. That's
just
food.
Watch it. Just what that whole
menacing.
Scene it's menacing.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
Yes.
It's on Netflix.
There, still there.
If you got an evening, 3 hours of your time, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Dracula attacks the convent.
He does. He wants his bride.
He rocks up as a wolf. In possibly one of the best scenes in the entire show. When he comes
it's done practically as well.
Yeah. When he comes out of the body of a wolf. And I think he's used that wolf to travel during the day.
Probably, yeah.
And he comes out, they used a mixture. They built it, they built the set up and they had a bunch of contortions coming out, so out of the body, covered in
it's a weird birth.
goo, and then eventually it is Clay's Bang. He had to come out of it as well. He's just stark naked in front of all these nuns. And you can imagine, to them, how horrific that is. It's an insult to them.
I do, because all the nuns are armed with a stake at this point, this army of nuns just at the gate, and obviously not inviting him in. Agatha has kind of pre-warned them, these are the rules of the vampire. I only need one. Which one of you is going to crack first? But I do like the fact how none of them are giving him eye contact, and he thinks that's because they're all petrified of him and they're all weak. And then Agatha's like, they're nuns and you are stark bollock naked. It's not your eyes that they're avoiding, mate. I do like that.
Agatha opens the gate.
She does.
Because she wants to test her fear. She obviously, I think her family in this have a history with vampires.
Yeah, she knows a lot about vampire mythology, but she doesn't. She's trying to put it to the test.
Yeah, like her
Prove what works and what
her
doesn't
big thing
work.
is she wants to know why.
Yeah.
Like why? She's like, there's so many like myths about the vampires, and so many have seen that work. Like, why is it garlic? Why sunlight?
Why does he need an invitation? You know, like she even says at certain times, like, the rules don't make sense.
But
like there's no logic to them.
The rules don't make sense, but there's proof that they work.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting. Like, she opens it, obviously needs an invitation. She cuts her finger. It makes him like basically act like a dog at that point. Like he's like going wild over this blood.
Yeah.
And because he attacks it with a bat, she's like, "Oh, sorry, can you stop the bats? It's kind of hard."
Yeah.
She is not afraid of him at all. This the first time they met, and he is now so fascinated by her.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, like from the get go, you know, like she's a worthy adversary, I think, and that's not something he's had in a while.
Yeah, obviously Dracula fights his way in.
Well, he uses Harker.
Yeah.
Because in this particular world as well, it turns out a vampire cannot stake themselves.
They can't kill themselves.
They can't kill themselves, which is particularly cruel. And so Harker finds Dracula finds Harker. And Harker's tried to attack Mina and is so disgusted with himself that he tries to stake himself and it doesn't work. And so Dracula uses that against him and he says, "Look, if you let me in, I will kill you. Like it'll be a mercy kill. I will end you, but invite me in."
You only needed one.
Unfortunately, Harker takes him up on that.
Oh god, he literally takes a nun's head off.
He fucking massacres the nuns.
Yeah. Uses wolves to do it. It's like it's a game to him. He's not even eating most of them.
I'm dead. I'm not unreasonable. he's got charm.
He's got a lot of thing is like this is probably the most fun he's had in like decades.
Oh, probably. Well, he's been alone, just like dwelling in his castle, hasn't he? Like waiting for fresh.
That's the big thing.
meat.
The castle's like there's no servants here.
No, exactly. It's a great first episode.
Yeah.
It really is. And it ends something on a cliffhanger.
It does end on a bit of a cliffhanger because we end up in Agatha's lab, essentially.
Yes.
Mina, and what is it? What's the circle made out of? I can't remember. Is it like...
Oh, does she not just put salt down?
Is it salt?
I don't know. That's like salt is traditionally a thing, isn't it, to ward off evil?
Yeah.
But
Or
it could be garlic.
Is it salt, garlic? Maybe mix. I think it's in the pages from the Bible as well.
Oh, yeah. No, she does that in the second episode.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but there's a barrier.
Yeah. He turns... First, Johnny turns up.
Yes.
And Mina wants to invite him into the circle to keep him safe, and Agatha's like, "No, don't do it.
Do not
You
invite
can't trust
him in."
You can't trust him." She does. And it's Dracula was inside... Because Inti sees his eyes aren't the same.
Yeah, Johnny Blue Eyes.
Dracula was wearing his skin.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming when I first saw it. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Because it's also the first time that Dracula meets Mina, and he's like, "I've been dying to meet you."
That's how that episode ends.
Yes.
It's
the two of them cornered by Dracula.
Yeah. Now not protected by their circle.
No.
And now we move on to episode 2.
Oh, Blood Vessel.
Blood Vessel.
Blood Vessel.
This was the whole reason we watched it.
Yeah.
We wanted to see the Demeter. But at this point, this was... Because the Demeter's always a small part of the story.
Yeah. It's
All we know is the ship
part.
has to make it to England as a ghost ship.
Yeah.
But we never had an hour dedicated to it before.
No. I've seen films where, it plays like an important part in the story, but I mean, for the most part, you've got to skip over it because we need Dracula to actually arrive in England and, that's where the main action happens. This is an entire episode devoted to what actually happened on that ship.
Yeah.
And obviously that's what the movie's going to be about as well.
It still kind of has its own twist.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
There's everyone on this ship is there because of Dracula. He's hand-picked people.
Yes.
And through this whole thing, we keep getting visions of him playing chess with Agatha because we don't quite know at the beginning of the episode what happened
at the end of episode 1. Yeah.
All we know is there is somebody in a room.
Cabin number 9.
And people start to disappear.
One by one.
One by one. You can see the suspicions growing. There's a fog around the ship that won't leave it. It follows it.
Yes.
And we find out through these chess matches and conversations with Agatha, everyone on that ship is there because he either wants something from each of them, but also so he can practice being in high society.
Yes.
He wants to know, can he be around a big group of people and not just kill them? And I think he does struggle with this.
He has some restraint, but he struggles with it, definitely. But yeah, like he's basically very carefully curated these victims, essentially.
Whether it's for manners,
intellectualism,
money.
Yeah.
He's business partners. He's a silent business partner with one of them, and if he doesn't make it there, then all his wealth will make it to him. It's actually kind of genius.
It actually is. It's something of a dress rehearsal, essentially.
Yeah.
Like it's practice for when he actually does arrive in England.
In this one, we get to see him in his full Dracula get-up when he's going to dinner.
Oh yeah,
and I love the cape and all and everything.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal, and
it's brilliant.
It's no shock as to who is in number 9.
It's Agatha.
It's Agatha. So what happened at the end of the last episode was Agatha said to let Mina go and say, why wouldn't I kill both of you? And Agatha threatens to kill herself. She's like, I'm more interesting. You want me.
Yeah, let her
go.
go.
If you kill her, you lose me.
Yeah, yeah.
You want your victims to be alive.
And he takes her up on that.
But he wants to... She is a special vintage, and he wants her to last. So he's slowly feeding off her.
On the Demeter.
And that's why they're having this conversation. She doesn't realise at first that it's her.
Yeah.
It's when she has that realisation of, when did I get here?
Yeah.
I absolutely love.
I love, again, it's the dynamic between them, isn't it? Because he's like, oh, come on, you're clever. You know the answer to this deep down. You know why we're doing this.
He's playing a game with her.
Totally, yeah. And he's waiting for her to catch up with it. And it's so cruel because when we actually see her, when they storm the cabin, and the captain's been protecting whoever is in the cabin.
She's not well.
She is not well. Like again, she's drained. She's got blood all over her, and the surviving passengers and crew believe that she is the vampire. Like at this point they know that there's something evil and superstitious on the ship with them. They think it's cursed, and so they kind of set her up.
Try to burn her as a witch.
As a witch, yeah. Like they're gonna hang her, I think, aren't they, or burn her or something. And she's trying to tell them it's not me, it's Dracula. And the thing I really like about her as well is like she is clever. She is like she's witty and she's smart, and she knows the only way that she can prove that she's not the vampire is to bring Dracula out. And so she bites the inside of her lip and she spits blood at him, and immediately he can't resist the blood. And so in ways he can show restraint, but in many ways he can't. Like the second blood is exposed to him, he loses it.
Yeah.
And that's when they realise, he's our man.
Yeah. So then you get that interest part where they now know that there is a vampire, and they know he has to be on the ship somewhere. And this is when she does the circle thing again with pages of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses their personalities. Like you have is he a servant?
Yeah, it's like a manservant, isn't he? To the rich guy who's married to the newlywed.
They were lovers as well, secret lovers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He basically uses his pride of being essentially a free man.
Yeah.
A noble man, even though he was never, in his line of work, he was never going to be.
Yeah.
It makes him very interesting. I kind of wish we could have spent more time with that character.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, this could have been even long. You could make a feature out of this, and obviously they have.
Yeah.
To get him out the circle to take on Dracula, but he only takes him on with a gun.
Fool's errand.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like I said, at this point, there's never been this much time dedicated to this part of the story, and they still do their own spin on it, because now that Agatha's up and mobile and everyone knows that Dracula's there, this ship cannot make it to land.
No.
It cannot. And we get to spend a lot of time with a lot of the crew as well. Like, everyone has a personality.
Yeah, they do. And I it's something I really enjoy. We get to... This is like a feature-length episode, so we get to hang out with these characters a lot. And
we also get to hang out with Dracula a lot.
We do. And, to see the way he interacts with the several passengers. And, yeah, there's a particular couple, they're newlyweds. And the husband, it's not spelled out, but it's very much inferred that he's gay. And that he's in a secret relationship with his manservant.
Mark Gatiss is gay, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, he is. And I can't remember the character's name, but the newlywed husband, he thinks that Dracula likes him and wants him. And it turns out so the newlywed's wife she's been killed by Dracula and her body has disappeared at this point. Dracula never wanted him. He wanted his wife. He wanted her. He's just collateral at this point.
Wanted his money.
Yes.
To fund his basically being able to move to London. And again, it plays into Dracula's not a sexual character. He's a sexy character, but he is not sexual. He does not care what you have between your legs.
No,
he will use you for what he needs you for, whether that's for food, whether that's for an advantage.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to him because he's not human.
I think he absolutely uses sexuality as a weapon and as a form of manipulation.
But he knows it's a weakness to a lot of people.
Yes, because even one of the victims who is he works on the ship. He's not someone that Dracula wants to eat because, this guy he's not educated and he's not valuable to Dracula, but Dracula is he's got a hunger and he needs like something to just
Agatha
quench.
calls him out on this. It's like, you can't control yourself.
You can't.
You've killed like 6 people at this point.
I point this moment out because Dracula uses sexuality as a way to like make the kill easier. Because I think that the guy's been incapacitated, his leg's been broken, so he's lying on the
He's
floor.
literally like straddles him.
Yeah, but the guy thinks it's one of the lady passengers, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that's why he like doesn't put up any kind of resistance. So Dracula, he's able to hypnotize people and allows them to see what it is they want to see. And a similar thing happened in episode 1 when he's biting Harker. Harker envisions he's having like a sex dream of Mina, whereas actually it's Dracula on top of him biting him. And
it's so interesting. The visuals are incredible. So they decide that Demeter cannot make it to land.
No, it's a cursed ship.
In this incarnation, the Demeter does not make it to land. They destroy all of his boxes of dicks. He has to sleep in a coffin on his own.
The soil. Transylvanian soil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I called this. I remember thinking when they went to his rooms, he's not even slept in. I'm thinking he's probably got soil in his bed. He did.
And
that's where he's been hiding. He's been hiding in his own room.
Yeah.
But they blow up the ship.
They do.
And so Agatha does kill herself in the process.
Agatha knows she's a goner at this point. she knows the rules of vampirism.
She knows that she is dying.
She knows it's just a matter of time. But she wants to take out Dracula with her. So it's almost like a murder-suicide kind of pact. And the captain of the ship elects to stay with her as well and help her.
Captain goes down with the ship.
He goes down with the ship. Yeah.
Dracula gets into his coffin. Sinks to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
This is where the big twist. I remember because we think these episodes were consecutive nights, weren't they?
Yeah, they aired one.
It was like an event.
Yeah.
I remember because we must have been locked down when we were watching. I think we were watching them from different locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, he opens up the coffin.
Mm-hmm.
He makes it to land.
Yeah.
And he's met by a big beam of light from a helicopter.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit the time period, does it?
No, it's not 1897 anymore.
No, he's been underwater for a very long time, and he is met by someone that looks the spitting image of Agatha.
Yes. It's been 123 years, and he is met by Agatha's descendant, Zoe Van Helsing. Relative by blood. So she is like Agatha was Zoe's great-great-great aunt or something like that. That's
how the episode ends. It was just, it's like, welcome to England, Count Dracula.
Yeah.
What took you so long?
Yeah.
And it just ended. I remember just being like, what?
We're in the modern day,
we're in the modern day.
Yep. Oh, yeah, we are.
So that leads us to the final episode.
The Dark Compass.
Which is probably the most controversial because I think they take the most... Dracula in his own time is when he's at his most interesting, his most traditional. They really do something different here. And I personally think it works to an extent, but a lot of people just did not like how this went.
I understand it to a point because I love the Gothic and I love everything that involves. So I love the aesthetic of Gothic horror. I love the castles and I love like the Victorian Edwardian period. Like I love the mannerisms and all of that. The moment you step into modern day, obviously it loses something. And so I do to an extent understand why people were initially a bit like, like it's not special anymore. Like now it's modern day and blah, blah, blah. But they did something really different here. And I think it worked.
Yeah. Dracula gets away.
Yes.
I don't think interesting. He's like, oh, that's a camera isn't it? And it's
Yes.
how do you know? It's when you've been around as long as I have, you're used to massive jumps in
It's
technology.
that's the thing. I love his reaction because when he emerges on the beach, he's staggered to see
It's
Zoe.
I like the flying thing.
And the flying thing, it's he's not scared. He's intrigued by what he's seeing, and he starts laughing when he realizes how much time has passed.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I've got a bit of catching up to do."
Yeah.
But he does escape.
So he does escape, and they find this house in the middle of the countryside, and he sees this house as a palace. And he's like, "Oh, so many wonderful things," and the woman who lives there is like,
"What the fuck are you doing in my house?"
It's she thinks he's a friend of her partner's.
Yeah.
Or
Brought
is
him back
he's
after a
literally
night out.
in the fridge because he's drained him.
Is that the
But
white box thing?
The fridge, yeah. There's that. Is he in the fridge? Is that the white box thing?
Yeah.
He's the place is a dump, but to him,
It's a
all
palace.
the little trinkets, and he's and the moving picture box. He's never seen a TV before, but this goes back to he gets things from blood. Blood is lives. He's learned about the modern day from her partner.
Yes. So he's up to speed.
So he's more up to speed. He's like, oh yes, telephone.
Yeah.
He's obviously he still has to work through what things are, but when the phone rings, oh you have an orchestra?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, telephone. But he is so amazed by the TV because he can look upon the sun.
Yeah, he's just watching footage.
He's just watching footage. He's basically just not watching National Geographic. He's just looking at it's the first time he's been able to look at the sun.
Yeah.
He is just
enraptured.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Besotted with it.
We know what's going to happen to her.
Yes.
But he is tracked down by Agatha.
Zoe.
No, Zoe. Yeah, she's Zoe now.
Yes.
Zoe, she plays obviously a dual role.
So Zoe is she is a doctor. She's a scientist, and she works on behalf of the Jonathan Harker Foundation,
Which was set up by Mina after she escaped.
Yes, Mina, one of the only survivors from the convent massacre.
Their overall objective is to capture and study Dracula.
Yes.
There's a lot of references to where they get their funding. It's never said exactly where it comes from, but they clearly are a bit of a shady company as well. A shady company with an ultimately good end goal, but again, their end goal of what they want to do with Dracula is also very questionable.
Yeah.
And they're basically he bites Zoe, and it's instantly her blood poisons him.
Yeah, he vomits instantly
Because she has cancer.
She's dying.
Her blood is literally poison to him.
Yeah.
And he's he knows instantly what it is. But she starts bringing the house down on him. She's they leave him a coffin and say, you either get in the coffin, or we bring this house down on you.
Yeah, just stop bulldozing
instantly,
it.
you can see a lot of Agatha in her. But she has the resources to.
Yes.
Dracula is locked up, and they have this special glass cage, where they can open up the
sunroof for any
the sunroof, so they could keep him into a corner. So if they want to go in and try and take blood and whatnot, and they can't get the needle through, so he has to cut himself. But he's sometimes why is there a toilet? He's I know why you have a toilet, but I'm a vampire.
Yeah. There's a right amount of camp throughout the whole miniseries that's just hits the spot. But yeah. And he brings in a lawyer.
Yeah, and I adore this. I think this is a much funnier episode, and it's played by Mark Gatiss.
Mark Gatiss plays
you are
Renfield.
infringing on my client's rights. We've been representing him for 200 years.
Yes.
They really are oldest client.
Yes.
But they're why does he have access to the index? They gave him a tablet full of literature.
Yeah.
He's who gave him the Wi-Fi password? He's it's literally my name.
It's my name. Oh.
So he's been Skyping his lawyer.
Yeah.
And he gets him out. Because they point out quite quickly, is you hold him against his will.
You're unlawfully.
Do you have any proof that he has killed people?
Yeah.
You're clearly holding. This is not a military operation because you've got mercenaries. Basically, gets him out.
Yes.
Very quickly.
And obviously, Renfield does what Renfield does best. He helps his master.
Yeah.
He gets him a place to live. He brings him his victims. He helps him with research.
He's using Tinder to get victims.
He is, yeah. Tell me that's not genius. Yeah. Come on,
the next time we see Renfield, he's much more dishevelled, and he's doing a crossword. He's Dracula.
Yeah,
Dracula's the answer for everything.
Every single one, and he's eating his flies, and yes.
Yeah.
But at some point, Dracula stumbles upon Lucy Westenra.
Yeah.
Who, obviously, people who know the book, she is a very important character in the original story. There's two characters in the book, in the female characters in the book. So we've got Mina and we've got Lucy. And these two characters have always traditionally been pitted against each other. And I think films make a lot out of, underlining the distinctions between them. Mina is the one that survives. Mina is like the pure, like angel of the house kind of figure. Lucy is the one that's bitten by Dracula and succumbs to vampirism. And something also that's really macabre in the book is Lucy's chosen demographic of victim is children. And, she's referred to as the bloofer lady. Children see her at night, wandering around trying to lure child victims. And there's something just, particularly very eerie about that. So Lucy is a very important kind of figure. And in this particular adaptation, she is portrayed as this very kind of nihilistic character. She's very beautiful. She's very young.
She's very vain. She loves...
Very narcissistic.
She's not afraid...
Of anything, really.
And I think, she keeps trying to push her life to the extreme. She wants to go out, she wants to party, she wants to just keep doing as much as she can because she wants to feel something.
Yes. And in a nice other connection to the book, we've got a character introduced in this episode called Jack Seward. Obviously Dr. Seward from the book. And
Dracula takes his phone and that's how he finds...
I'm pretty sure in the book Seward is one of the suitors of Lucy. She ends up marrying Arthur Homewood, doesn't she? I think. But Seward is he's infatuated with Lucy. He loves her in this one, and she's dated him for a bit, and now she's kind of bored of him. But he's still.
Personally, I think this should have been a 4-part series. Maybe. It's more main downside. They're introducing a lot of new characters. Even to an extent, Zoe is still a new character. I think the modern day needed 2 episodes to establish a lot of the new characters. Because we're instantly we don't really care about Jack. We don't spend enough time with him.
Not really.
Yeah. Lucy, I think, is a very interesting character, but we needed more time with her. And like I said, she becomes infatuated with Dracula as well. Allows him to feed regularly.
Willingly. And he is so beguiled by her because he's in centuries I've never met anyone like you who's offered themselves willingly to me. And he even says are you not scared of anything? And she says no. No.
Which seems to be the key to his bride. He realizes he had to find someone that would give it to him willingly. Essentially, it's the key to a happy marriage, isn't it? Find someone who's going to marry you willingly.
There is an important thing with Lucy as well. She doesn't fear death.
Yeah.
And that's important at the very end. But anyway.
So Dracula finally finds the key to having a bride that's not a feral. He got close with Johnny. Yeah. Because Johnny retains something.
But Johnny always...
But with Lucy, he could have someone that is like him.
And wants him.
Then, while all this is going on, Zoe, who is dying, she's lost Dracula at this point.
Yeah. She's kind of just feeling a bit sorry for herself, and the cancer's obviously getting worse. And
she basically takes because Dracula's trying to hint at her, blood is lives.
Yeah.
And she works out what that means, and she drinks his blood.
She has a sample of his...
connects with her descendant.
Agatha. And the personalities start to merge.
Yeah.
Basically. Agatha is more sort of stronger personality. And so Zoe has visions of Agatha, and Agatha sort of tells her, you can't forget this. You found him, you set him loose, you've got to finish this. You've got to find him because you know how this is going to end. And Agatha helps her.
Agatha kind of reveals that she is part of Dracula, so now Zoe's part of Dracula. She's there's so many people
here.
And she keeps saying, why is Dracula afraid of these things? That's what you have to work out. You have to work out why he is.
I do like the first exchange between them, where Zoe's in a hospital bed and she's yeah, but I'm dying. And Agatha's well, I'm dead. But that doesn't stop me. We've got work to do.
For the same, she does such a good job at playing 2 completely different characters.
Yeah, she does. She's great. Yeah. Love Dolly Wells.
Obviously, Lucy has to die.
Dracula's been prepping her for death. She knows what the outcome is going to be. And he stresses something very important upon her, when the time comes, which is under no circumstances can you get cremated. And
because he takes her to this, again, I think needed more time to be explored, but it's so incredible. He takes her on dates to graveyards and helps her listen. And you can hear out spirits that don't know they're dead. And he's most people that die don't know that they are dead. And when she does die, in her reflection, she is trapped looking at herself dead. And God, it's so horrifying.
It actually is.
And when she does get cremated, she feels everything. Oh, it's when you really stop to think about it, it's a truly horrifying way to die.
She's conscious of everything that's happening to her. She feels every single burn. But there is another reason why Dracula also said, do not get cremated. Because obviously, the way you look when you're dead mirrors how you were in life.
Yeah, I think it's more, in particular, not the moment she died, how she looks the moment she wakes up.
Yeah. Which is burnt to a fucking crisp.
Yeah, so when she realizes what she looks, because at first she just sees herself as
beautiful, Lucy, and she even says, like, oh, blue for lady, like she says that quote, which is kind of haunting. And then when she actually rocks up at Dracula's pad, and Zoe is there at that point,
and Jack's there,
and Seward is there, and they all react. We don't necessarily see what they see right away.
Zoe's hospital room, it says it's like Ward 72, isn't it?
AD 72.
AD 72, like
this baby right here.
AD 72, which is the last time the Dracula transitioned from when the book is set to the modern day.
We see what you did, Mark Gass.
We see what you did, what you did there.
So, Lucy walks in and it's revealed that, she... Unfortunately, now she's just doomed to wander the earth looking like a fucking burnt crisp,
Yeah.
And it's... The actress that plays Lucy is called Lydia West. And I think when it's actually revealed to her what the reality is, what she does actually look like, when she finally sees the reality of it, oh my God. Like, it was hard to watch the first time. Second time, it was not any easier.
She's a fantastic actress.
It's chilling. Like, can you just imagine?
It's kind of how I imagine, like, a car crash victim would be. Say if you wake up and you've had to have your face reconstructed and you don't look like yourself anymore.
Yeah.
That's how I imagine it must be.
Just the way, like, she collapses to the floor and she is just, like, inconsolable with the emotion that she's feeling, like the hurt and the anger and the shame and everything. And Dracula tries to console her. Dracula tries to comfort her, and he's, she's like, look at me. And he's like, I don't care. He's like, I don't care. You're still my bride. Like, you're still my favorite bride. And she's like, well, it matters to me. And then he kind of gets a bit sick of her. Like, he's sick of consoling her. So he just sort of wanders off. And in the end, it's Jack that comes forward and does the honourable thing.
Proves then staking does work.
It's it's a tough scene.
It
I
is.
think, yeah.
But it leads to the Agatha kind of emerges at this point from Zoe.
Yeah, the accent starts like coming through.
And they have their showdown. Like,
she tells Seward to leave. Like, we need to have a private conversation.
This is why I kind of think, like, what was the point of having him there for such a short... Yeah. I get it for Lucy. We needed another episode.
I think we did.
But again, for such a big budget show as this one, it would have become very expensive.
Yeah, I also don't think we get like the full gravitas of Zoe dying of cancer, because she's sidelined for a big chunk of the episode to make way for Lucy, and like that subplot with Dracula, and it's like, well, we kind of forget about Zoe in a way too. So yeah, I agree. A second episode.
Yeah. But we find out what it is. Why does Dracula fear the cross?
Why do any of these, like, legends work? The garlic and the sunlight and all of it. Yeah.
Dracula even theorizes, like, I've ate so many peasants that are afraid of God that I've gotten a lot of that myself.
Yeah.
She's like, no, it's simpler than that. And do you want to break down why he is afraid of God?
Yeah. So she's been trying to rack her brains, like Agatha, even back in, like, when they first encountered, like, why do all of these things work? Why do you fear the cross? And it's actually very simple. He fears the cross because of what the cross represents. And the cross ultimately represents a man willing to sacrifice himself, a man who was not afraid of death. And ultimately in this version, they posit that Dracula is petrified of dying. He is scared of death.
Because he comes from a line of warriors that all died in battle.
Yes.
He can't.
And it's the one thing he can't do. And they also, she also kind of goes a bit deeper with it, and she's like, you kill all these, these aristocrats, and you try and find particular victims, like particular vintages and flavours of a society that deep down you feel unworthy of. She's like, you're a monster, you are beneath all of these people. And he's finally confronted with this.
He's a monster for acting like a man.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in like this brilliant moment which mirrors exactly what Peter Cushing does in Dracula 1958 when he, you know, runs across the dining room table and he yanks down the curtain. Dracula's exposed to sunlight. She does the exact same thing, and the sunlight is just, you know, gaping in through the window, and Dracula's instantly like, oh shit.
We're on the floor, like, and then he's like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't kill him.
Doesn't affect him in any way. And then we also realise that he's just come to believe his own myths. You know, it's like he fears the cross, but it's not like if he's touched by it, it's going to burn him. It's just a fear that he has.
Yeah.
And equally, you know, sunlight, it doesn't affect him, but he's just come to believe it will. He's come to believe in his own mythology and his own legend.
So part of what he said was true. It's like, I've ate so many people that fear these things.
Yeah.
That I believe. And that sort of, after eating so many people, I think, like, the myths and rumours of Dracula, he started to believe them himself.
Totally. I think it's
Fascinating.
interesting. I don't know if it disappointed a few people when they watched it. Like, oh, that's why? Like, that's kind of lame. I don't know. To me, it works. To me, that was like a really interesting spin.
We've seen Dracula be staked to death. We've seen him burned to death.
Yeah.
We have seen so many different ways that Dracula can die, but very rarely has it ever been explored why.
Yeah, totally.
But to have that reveal of it won't actually kill him.
Yeah.
And I think the next bit is the ending is quite incredible. Like
I think so too.
Zoe, such neat Agatha, is dying in this moment.
She's in pain. And she always kind of like collapses.
Yeah.
And
he respects her so much that he is going to make sure she doesn't die in pain.
Yeah.
Because he is broken at this point. Like his whole world has just been completely shattered open.
Yeah.
And she wants to die in this moment. It's like this. Basically, she doesn't want to kill him. She wants to leave him with
this revelation.
This revelation of what is, which in theory could have really backfired because you'd now have this monster that would not be scared of going out in the daytime.
In the daytime, it just changes his sleeping pattern.
He drinks from her to kill her, knowing it will kill him. Murder-suicide.
Essentially.
And it's such a weirdly romantic way
well, it is, because
because he has been so infatuated with her through the whole thing.
Through time.
Literally through time. It had to kind of end this way.
Well, it's also interesting because I'd forgotten from the first time I watched it, but when she's being bitten, what he kind of projects in her mind to take the pain away of being bitten is that they're actually making love. And she's kind of enjoying it.
Yeah.
And she realizes, like, are you killing me? Are you drinking my blood? And he's like, yes, I am.
But you'll die.
And he's like, after all this time, did you really think I'd let it hurt?
It's almost like a little bit of a, fuck you, I can sacrifice.
Yeah.
I can
be the better person.
I can be the better person.
Yeah. And, he's killing her, but he is poisoning himself. And the two of them, obviously going to, like, go down together, essentially. But it's like, perhaps the one decent act that Dracula has ever committed is in this very moment. And it requires him to die. And it is such an interesting scene. I mean, saying before, but like sexuality with Dracula is very kind of ambiguous. Like, does he enjoy it? Is he sexually driven? Is he not sexually driven, but he can still enjoy sex, like in the carnal, physical way? I don't know, but I think this scene is quite suggestive, and like he wants her to imagine them in some kind of like a romantic scenario.
Well, when he projects images of them, it's always for their benefit, not his.
Not his. Yeah.
Like ultimately their benefit to be tricked. It does benefit him because he gets what he wants out of it.
Yeah.
But he wants to project something that they are going to enjoy.
Yeah, totally.
I think it was a very bold direction to take it in, and I think it really helps it stand out. And they have talked about, Claes Bang has talked about the potential of a second. See, I don't know where they would take it.
I didn't know that, but that fascinates me.
Was it Mark Garson's like, it's something like if you pour blood on Dracula's ashes, he always comes back. So I think they are open to the idea of doing a continuation of it.
But it's like, how do we bring back Dolly Wells?
Yeah, where do you go from here? I think it would be interesting, but it is also, the story is it is done. It is done.
It's I think they told the story that they wanted to tell, and I think they told it really, really well.
They're a great creative team behind the sets they created for it were fantastic. The castle was all a massive set on the inside.
Yeah.
The ship was a massive set.
It's fantastic.
It's just, I get why people weren't that fond of the direction they took the final episode, but it helps it stand out.
It's like you said at the beginning, it's like the burden of adaptation. It's like, on the one hand, especially when it comes to Dracula, that has been done so many times before.
I think he's one of the most adapted characters of all.
He is the most.
Yeah.
Officially.
This year alone, we've had 2 Dracula movies by Universal
Yeah.
Studios come out.
It's like, as audiences, you know, like, we want to see familiar things. You know, like, we want to see the castle, we want to see Dracula killing people, we want to see the brides and all that stuff. But we also want to see something different. And I really do think that this adaptation blended those two things really well. Like, we got a lot of the traditional Dracula Gothic stuff, but they also gave us a very unique spin on it as well.
We also got to explore an area of the traditional story that we haven't really explored that much, which was the Demeter.
Yes, exactly. I'm still bitter that we've not seen the film.
Yeah, we got old decrepit Dracula, we got sexy Dracula in the cape, but then we got like the modern Dracula, who's obviously, he's going to adapt his wardrobe for the modern day. He's going to wear suits. We have all interpretations of Dracula together.
Yeah. It's
in
like,
one.
Don't get me wrong, you know, I love the Hammer Draculas. I really, really do. But Christopher Lee doesn't have a lot of personality as Dracula. And I think that was a choice, and, you know, especially, like, as the films went on and he didn't like the scripts, and so he elected to be mute, you know, and just more of a presence.
Plus, like, Satanic Rites of Dracula, he does try to do something a bit different, but ultimately that...
Is an
one day
interesting film.
We'll get into that one.
We plan on doing that. But I love it when Dracula shows a bit of personality, and Clay's bang, you know, like, that you can tell this is a guy that's been around for centuries and is enjoying the various aspects of society and you know, like, picking up on different sense of humours and things like that. And I enjoy watching him. He is a lot of fun.
I think it also came out very interesting because this is a Dracula that is essentially binge eating various different vintages in a time when we were all stuck inside just binging things.
That's interesting.
So to me, it was a Dracula that kind of spoke to where we all were.
Yeah, this is a guy that, you know, is, like, enjoying all of his vices in a time when we really couldn't.
Have you got any more notes on this one?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Just really enjoyed it.
Check it out. It's on Netflix. Who doesn't have Netflix these days?
Yeah.
Get a trial if need be. It's 3 episodes. And if you have a fascination with Dracula, it is a very interesting watch.
It is. Clay's bang alone is brilliant, but Dolly Wells also, she puts in a great performance.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to watch Last Voyage of the Demeter at some point.
Hopefully. You never know.
You never know. It might not even be worth the wait. We don't know.
We don't know.
We've tried not to watch that many. We've seen some good reviews, we've seen some bad reviews. We don't know.
But we'll sure as hell see.
It's one of the downsides of doing this type of channel when you're in the UK.
Yeah, I know. And I've heard...
It's like with Pearls. We got it 4 months after everybody else did.
I know, and it's like the Voyage of the Demeter is so up our alley as well. I was so looking forward to it when I saw that first trailer.
But we got to... It led us to re-experiencing this. And
yes. Yeah.
I loved it. I loved every second of it. So, thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week.